So yeah, we're live. So hi, thank you for being here with me. As most of you know by now, this month we are sponsored by Aavegotchi. So for those of you who don't know, they're an on-chain collectible ghost staked with Aave's interest-generating A tokens. And basically you can compete for player rewards by earning XPs, leveling up and increasing the rarity of your Aavegotchi friend. They're owned by the community and they're governed by the Aavegotchi DAO and the native eco governance token of Ghost. So you can summon your first Aavegotchi today already, and you can join the future of the DeFi staked NFT avatars. As usual, we will put the Discord link in the comments so you can have a look for yourself. Great. So thank you so much for being here with me. It's a pleasure to have you. How are you doing?
Thank you for having me. Doing really good. Yeah, we were talking about just finishing up on the Nifty Gateway artwork and just slowly feeding that into, Twitter and getting some eyes on that. So super excited for that.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll definitely go and talk about that like in a second. In the meantime, obviously you don't need any introduction, but would you like to say a few words about yourself to the audience and give a brief intro?
Yeah, just a bit of backstory. I mean, I've been doing fine art since I was a kid. I grew up in the 90s doing that stuff and being inspired by Japanese anime and then ended up going to college in San Francisco at the Academy of Art University, where I studied visual effects and animation because I was kind of fell in love with film and everything that was going on with Star Wars at a young age. So that's kind of where I went from fine art to digital art, was probably in the early 2000s, and learned a lot through there. Met my wife through the Academy of Art, and then around 2010, I started to work on feature films, which was kind of like a really big dream come true for me. So I've been doing visual effects for feature films, TV, and commercials for the past 10 years now. And then my wife and I founded doing the Xsullo stuff in about 5 years ago, in 2015. And I just started posting stuff on Instagram and tapping back into that fine art side of myself. So it's been quite the adventure.
Amazing, thanks. And obviously, I've read a little bit about you, and you've worked with a lot of different clients, a lot of different brands. So obviously, like artwork, I guess, as you just said, art, being an artist, I know these are all very taboo topics, but it's been a part of your life since forever. What does it mean for you? What value does it have for you?
I mean, obviously, there is the difference between working on client work and then working on personal work. I think it's just that personal freedom and exploration of like expression, like using through imagery. If it's something that I can't personally put to words, so I put it on the canvas, and it's just a pure form of expression. And a lot of my earlier stuff with Xsullo just kind of came from a real personal place of expression. And then I think the past few years, I've been being more inspired by what's going on in the world and like culturally and just politically, and using that in a way to express and kind of reflect what's going on around us. If that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. And obviously, like, you've worked, especially, I guess, from outside of the crypto and the NFT community, like you worked on in the real world, let's put it this way, for a long time. Like, what are some of the biggest lessons that you've learned over the past decade from your experience in, as well, like in different industries, from like VX to film? What is the baggage that you bring with you and lessons that you've learned?
I've learned a lot of great lessons. I mean, right off the gate, you have to be a team player and work with other people and work within teams, and being able to not like kind of like, it's known in the VFX industry, in the film industries, is you don't want to be like a diva and bring that on set or in a VFX house where it's all about like clearly it's not about your vision, it's about the client's vision at the end of the day. So it's about being respectful and being open-minded and just kind of sticking with deadlines. Deadlines is a big one. Staying on top of things, being very communicative, because working in-house and remotely, because my work has shifted more and more remote work for the past like 7 years, just kind of gradually went in that direction. So one of the biggest lessons in learning things was definitely open communication, you know, keeping that door always open with a client, because you're not like in the same place. They might be like across the country or in a different country in general. So yeah, patience and being, you know, aware of deadlines and communication. I think those are some of the big things.
I guess how would you translate that, like in the world that you're in now? So like in the NFT community, like what is stuff that you kind of like brought into this from your experience in the past decade?
I mean, a lot of it was from working remotely. You have to be a self-starter and you have to motivate yourself each day. So I've always been like that. I even noticed that back when I was in college, because I had some classes that were like online, and you kind of have to really be like a self-motivator, and to like, it kind of weighs a lot on your shoulders. So I think that really helped transcend into doing things like on Instagram and posting like every week and just being consistent and motivated. So a lot of self-motivation, I think played a huge key role in that. And I think that was, a lot of that was working remotely in the VFX industry. And then,
yeah, definitely. I think self-motivation is probably key for anyone working in this business, especially since you don't have clients, you don't really have like actual deadlines, so you just have to do it yourself, right?
Yeah, and self-motivation may be kind of tied into just being passionate. You just love what you do, you know? Like, it's your own personal work, it's your own personal expression. You know, you're not being directed by anyone. It's not their vision, it's your vision. So yeah, growing up in the 90s, doing this art now, I realize how much like Japanese anime like impacted and influenced my artwork. Everything from Akira to Ghost in the Shell to Dragon Ball Z.
Yeah. And actually, talking about your style, it's very unique, very, you know, surreal, like a lot of vivid colors, techno dystopian, like signifiers. Can you expand a little bit more on your style and what does it mean for you, and also like potentially how it's changed in time?
Yeah, when I was a kid, I started getting really into colors. I remember I drew this like, I outlined my hand on a piece of paper and I just started drawing these kind of like really psychedelic swirly lines, like all various different colors from like pinks and blues and yellows. And I just like, I remember having like the funnest time with it, because for some reason the colors, and just playing with colors like that, it's like so like pleasing to put down on paper. And I just remember people being like, whoa, that's so trippy. Like people loved it. And ever since then, that's like one of the first experience that I had with colors. And I think that's stuck with me over the years. And then when I got into the VFX industry, because everything was so photorealistic, colors are muted and toned down and set in more of a real world, not like a pop surreal world. So I kind of took a big pause for about 5 or more years on doing this kind of artwork. And so it was really nice to just jump straight back into it. And it was kind of just being like a kid again, going back to that drawing in my hand in like 6th grade. And it's been really fun. The colors, yeah, it's just, I think it's eye-catching for one. I think when I first started Instagram, like I just was already in love with colors and I wanted to do certain specific colors to catch people's eyes. And I noticed that it was well received. So obviously I was interested in expanding my growth. So I think it definitely helped.
Yeah, it is. I can say it's very eye-catching. I keep looking at all of your your background.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and when I first started, I know it's like those pinks are like, they really pop. And it's like certain acrylics I use for these. I try to find the most like richest pop feeling pink out there that I could find. And I've actually haven't painted as much in the past couple of years. Just I think because of the Instagram growth, and I started getting more clients in that were interested in my this kind of artwork as opposed to like the VFX stuff. So it's been really pretty neat.
And can you talk a little bit about, I guess, like the way that you produce? So you obviously mentioned that you don't paint as much. So is it done primarily like digitally, or do you start by like drawing and then kind of transfer it on the digital side? Like how does the process work?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's a question I get a lot from people. Like, I start actually all this stuff in 3D in Maya, and utilizing DAZ 3D, where I take like a base model in and then bring it over into Maya and do like a basic pose with it. And then I start like kind of cutting it apart, and I put like a skeleton system like underneath the skin, because I like to do that whole layering of like ripping like, you know, faces off and you can see the interior of it. And then I light it and compose it in 3D until I'm like satisfied with it. And then I shoot off like, it's called a multi-channel EXR render, and it gives you certain layers like a toon shader, kind of give it that toon effect. And I take it into Photoshop, and I just kind of do a composite of it. And then I start drawing on top of it. So it goes from 3D and then into 2D, and then I just go crazy on top of it. And,
that's amazing. That's really cool. So you kind of go like, I guess, the other way around, which is nice. It's interesting.
Yeah, exactly. And I wasn't sure how it was going to be received, or if people were like, "Oh, that I don't like the way you do that," like when I first started it. But it just I loved the process so much that I think until recently I just started showing people that how I do that, and I think people have been loving seeing the before and afters, what it looked like in 3D, and then the final image.
Yeah, 100%. That's super cool. And talking about like, you know, NFT and this world, I guess, you obviously joined the community in November, so not that long ago. How has your experience been so far? Like, what do you think of it?
I think it's super awesome. It makes sense why something like this would finally happen. It's been super welcoming. People have been super friendly. You kind of realize how small the community is, but it's like growing every month. And you know, I just learned that it's only about 6-7 months old. Like, but there's been people been doing NFT stuff since like the Pepe thing a few years ago. But it was Slime Sunday that introduced me. So, you know, if it wasn't for him, I'm not sure if how easy it would have gotten on to like Super Rare, because he pretty much linked me up with Super Rare and Nifty Gateway. So, you know, much love to Slime Sunday and everything he's doing, even with Blouse. He's the man. He's the guy that got me into it. So, and it's wild. It feels like it's always changing, even though I've been in it for like since November. It feels like it's been a lot longer than that. And I know a lot of people have been saying that. My perspective is true.
Yeah, 100%. I think everyone that I've spoken to that is part of this world feels the same. Like literally, you know, one day is like, I don't know, a year. So yeah, it's ever changing.
And it's amazing what people are doing. Like, I think you were talking with Han before, and the crypto cubes. Like, I think people are becoming really, really creative, and it's super cool seeing people's different approaches.
Yeah, 100%. And it's also, you know, I think like something that a lot of people share is like the community side of it, which is really big. And you know, the collaboration and as you said as well, like somebody introduced you, and so you know you became part of this community, and it's really very much about like, you know, connections and community and network, which and supporting network, which I think is very nice. And it does give a nice like vibe to the community in general. Yeah, it's amazing. And I guess, like, you know, coming from like a long experience in the real art world, of producing art for clients, of working on in the film industry as well, like, are there any aspects of that world that, you know, you would like for the NFT world to have more, or not?
I mean, I could eventually see, I don't know if it's going to be ready yet, but I would love to see like more short films, and you know, it could utilize visual effects or not, but maybe more filmography and more photography entering the space. You know, yeah, with the thing with the visual effects industry is just there's always cutting edge technology. When you're like in that industry, everyone's like literally on like the cutting edge of pushing the technology. And what has become really big in the VFX industry is using Unreal Engine in real-time rendering, because a lot of artists are bogged down, 3D artists are bogged down on render times. You know, they make a piece of artwork, they're really happy with it, and then they have to render it, and it takes like, you know, 12 hours, 24 hours. But, you know, if they go back to it and like, oh shoot, this didn't come out the way I expected, so they have to kind of go back and make adjustments, and it's a big time kill. So Unreal Engine, it's all in like real time in live, and it's right there. You don't have to worry about render times or those 12, 24 hours. It's done really fast. And the film or the TV show Mandalorian, they started utilizing Unreal Engine to do their backgrounds and their environments. And that's been like big time effective, and you can just become more creative when you're working. I feel like in real time, you can like on the fly, you can really change things and really push the imagery. So VFX Industry is really pushing that, and Unreal Engine 5 is coming out later this year. So I feel like a lot of VFX artists, I feel like myself, I feel like I'll still do stuff in Maya and Cinema 4D, but I think things like Unreal Engine will become a big flagship and could really change the quality and just the amount of work being produced, like for 3D artists. And I think that will definitely have an impact in a positive way in the NFT space.
Definitely, 100%. And I guess the flip side to that question is, what are, you know, things that you've seen, like the highlights of this world, of the NFT world, that are not, I guess, possible or, you know, present in like, you know, client and art world in the real world?
I mean, it's mostly just being able to be self-expressive and do whatever you want to do, and then people react to it and reciprocate, and being able to build that collector base. That collector, I mean, I noticed the artist to client relationship is different than a you know, artist to a collector base, because when you work with a client, they have a set amount of like budget or money cap, and they want to suck as much time out of your day to get the best work for the lowest amount of money. It's kind of and so it's kind of like you have to kind of juggle that and be diplomatic in that sense. But when it comes to NFT, I think it's really neat, because, you know, it can be up to the collector how much how much they connect with the piece, and how much they're willing to pay for it. So it's really fascinating. I mean, it's really cool, like watching like people bid on your work and like seeing it. Like it's pretty amazing. But at the end of the day, it's really fun to just like reach out to the collector and ask them, like, you know, what was it about the piece that you connected with? So it becomes more on a personal level between a collector and an artist, compared to an artist to a client. That makes sense.
Yeah, 100%. And it's actually super funny, because literally, like, the next question that I had in mind was actually like speaking about collectors in the NFT world, like, because I find it very interesting as well. Like, it's very fascinating that collectors are, you know, artists first of all. They're investors, or they're blockchain experts. Like, the collectors are in, you know, normally like in art are dedicated like art experts or art lovers, whilst like here it's anyone or everyone really. And it's really fascinating because it's more, as you said, about like the personal connection with the piece. There's no barriers to entry for collecting art, really, which I personally find really cool. So yeah, my next question, was actually to speak about this aspect of collection, and how are you finding it specifically? Like if there's any specific like ways that you've managed to connect with like your collectors, or this whole like the idea of like that collector to artist relationship. I think it would be interesting to expand.
Yeah, one of the most interesting stories was one of the collectors that collected my piece on Super Rare. He reached out to me and he's like, "I've been a long-term fan of yours and actually bought one of your first prints like back in like 2018." I'm like, "Whoa, really?"
Wow.
Like, it blew my mind. Like these people were like actually following me for a lot longer than I thought. And they're like, "Yeah, I have it like hung up and everything." And he like bought like 3 prints of mine. Even like I did something for WowXWow, which is an online art gallery that sells like paintings and digital art, but it's not connected with the blockchain. This was like a couple of years ago. And he tried to buy one of my paintings on there, but it never, I kind of didn't work out with that because I think I ended up having to cancel like last minute, something like that. So he tried to collect a painting of mine. It didn't work out, but yeah, he ended up collecting one of these pieces, and it was just kind of blew my mind that like the kind of the history with that was really neat and felt kind of really special. So I was really happy with like him being able to collect that. And one of the other trippy ones was when I put up this Bitcoin's bananas, and people were starting to put their bids in, and then there was like a bid between like BitBuzz and then West Coast Bill, and then I think BitBuzz mentioned that like him and West Coast Bill were actually in a bidding war back in the late 90s, like on eBay. I'm like, that's so cool. And, like, it's just really neat to hear, like, even these collectors, like, going at it even way back then. And it's just, it creates like a really cool story, I think, for these collectors. And I can really tell that they get just excited about the artwork as the artist does in the community, obviously.
Yeah, that's super funny. That's nice to hear. And also something like that I think is interesting to hear your perspective on is the curatorial parts. Like what do you think of that? Because I sometimes I hear from artists like that this is definitely something that in a way is where like the NFT like world is missing, or there's not enough. Like, do you agree, or what are your thoughts on that?
Like curating, like kind of self-promoting yourself.
Yeah, either
Yeah.
self-promoting or from third parts as well.
Yeah, I think I remember hearing people talk about having more curators, and I mean, as far as I'm aware, I mean that's a big aspect of the fine art world. So I think
Yeah,
there's a lot of pluses to that. I think that would help build like reputation between the curator and the artist. I think that should be definitely allowed, a curator for sure. I think that would probably help the community. I think it can be up to the artist whether they want to be curated or if they want to just go independent. And like the whole self-promotion, definitely. I know like it can be weird for artists like to go on Instagram or mostly Twitter and just keep promoting their artwork from Super Rare. But just being diplomatic, but you want to put yourself out there and you want to be able to get some eyes on it, because sometimes that's what's nice about self-promoting is sometimes people don't see it right away. And if you decide, I need to, re-promote this a week later, they might actually end up seeing it. And I think there's nothing wrong with, promoting yourself in a reasonable manner. Make sure you're not spamming people.
Yeah, and I guess a big part of that is also, as you mentioned, of course, like connections and like the network that you build. That is potentially part of that self-promotion. Like obviously the more you get to know people, the more your pieces as well and your creations will navigate the world, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, 100%. And I've been doing, it's kind of tied into self-promoting, is showing breakdowns, like the process of how I make the artwork. I think
Yeah.
people, I think people always love to see how art's being made. I think that was like a big thing on even like on Instagram, where you can like time lapses were a big thing.
Yeah.
So I think to me it adds value and adds something else, another dimension to the artwork. You know, like I think these breakdowns are pretty beneficial.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. It's always like, well, from my perspective at least, it's always very interesting to see how like artwork is actually being made. Like it's like the behind the scenes. It's always stuff that that you want to know about. So it's cool. And I actually, now that I think about it, now that you've mentioned it, it would be even cooler to see more of it like on in the space.
Yeah.
Even like on Twitter itself, because obviously Twitter is like it's huge in NFT. I guess even more so than Instagram.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Bigger community in Twitter, and like you said, I think it would be really fun to see how people make their artwork, and I'm all for it.
Yeah. And obviously, you have like a big drop coming soon on the 28th, so a week from today, as you mentioned before,
Yeah.
on Nifty, which is great. Do you want to share like some details on it, like a preview, a backstory of the drop?
Yeah, I wasn't really, about a couple months ago when they reached out, I wasn't really sure what I was going to do, but my wife, we both met in art school, so she has a creative background and she has a really good eye for composition, and she's kind of a bit of like an art director of mine. So she was the one that kind of started out with some sketches and ideas and came to me that she's like, you should do a series of like cyborg pinup ladies, and different color schemes and something that feels cohesive, but if someone wants to get one or if they want to get the whole collection, which is really cool. So, when she said cyborg, and that's already kind of like something that interests me. So we definitely ran with it, and she helped do sketches and then helped model and pose these models in 3D, to the point where like, okay, this looks good. And then I just brought it in and started doing the same process I do all these other pieces. I start off in 3D, and then I draw on top of it to give it kind of a 2D feel to it. And then I go into compositing software like After Effects and add in all these shiny, reflective like animations, and to bring it some life and facial animations and just kind of breathe some movement into these poses. So it's been a lot of fun. Super happy with how they turned out. And I feel really good about that one.
Amazing. And what is can you share like, will it be free edition? Like how will the drop look like?
Oh yeah. Since I focused on one-in-ones on Super Rare, I decided to keep these open editions, and
Nice.
probably release like the price point here in the coming, probably like day before, whenever like Nifty wants to do that. But yeah, I ended up doing open editions, and this allows to bring in collectors of all sorts. I think that's the beauty of Nifty Gateways drop mechanics, is that it's going to allow more people to come in and collect your artwork. And I think that it's a great exposure and collector base that's going on there. So that's what's really fun about it, because just doing one-in-ones is fantastic, and then doing these open editions, it's going to be really exciting.
Yeah, definitely. Completely agree. I think, we've seen a lot of drops on Nifty lately, and it's the open editions are definitely a very cool way to show artwork and get that big and wide pool of collectors to be able to participate. Yeah, I personally love it, to be honest.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
great.
exactly.
And is there, obviously you talked about your wife collaborating and like helping you out with the drop, which is great. What about like any potential collabs that you're maybe, I don't know, thinking of, or artists that have been kind of like a an inspiration, or even like somebody that you might have your eye on for potential collabs?
Yeah, definitely there's collabs coming up. I don't think I heard to say, but yeah, David Krugman, he's a photographer, a New York-based photographer that creates these beautiful shots of like New York City that looks like kind of like Blade Runner-esque and a lot of atmosphere and lights. And I was really drawn from his art, and he was really drawn from my style. And we've actually done some collaborations together on like Instagram. So we've been talking about definitely doing a collab here soon.
Nice.
And then there's some other talks with collaborations with other artists, and then some of my musician friends that are part of the EDM world and kind of part of close to like the Blau circle. We're talking about doing a collab with music and visuals that Nifty Gateways sounds like they're definitely interested in.
Nice. And are these people already in the NFT world, or are you introducing them to it?
I'm introducing them to them. So they're like, yeah, there's like, what is it? I don't quite get it. And one of them's like that, but he's like totally game for it. And I understand like the confusion. And the other musicians is like, oh hell yeah, I'm pumped. I see like the potential of it already. So it's really cool seeing people that are kind of outside kind of coming in. Like that's kind of how I felt for like a second, like kind of confused of like what NFT is, but I'm like, wait, no, it makes sense. It's that whole scarcity and digital signature and ownership that just like clicked right away in my head. Not to draw too off topic, but that was part of the problems like with Instagram is people like digital art theft like runs rampant on Instagram, and a lot of followers be like, hey, that's not your artwork, it's actually Xsullo's or it's this digital artist, and it's a big problem on there. This way, when with the NFT space, it's really cool because it actually shows who owns the artwork and it shows like a value to it. So I think that's
100%. Yeah, you touched on scarcity. What are your thoughts on that?
I think scarcity can be really great. It's one of those things where I like the idea of like scarcity, but then again, I like the idea of like things like allowing like all the additions on Nifty Gateway. So I think I like both, honestly, in their own right. I like scarcity, but I also like allowing enough people to collect multiple editions.
A bit of both.
Yeah, the best of both worlds, I think.
Nice. And I guess like what is like thinking about your experience so far, like your time in the NFT world so far. Is there anybody or more artists or even collectors that have been an inspiration, or people that you've that have like shaped you in some way or form, or even guided you? Obviously, you've mentioned a few, but I'm wondering if there is anybody else.
Yeah, to be honest, I don't really get too inspired by like other artists. I love seeing the work, but yeah, I don't find too much like inspiration from specific individual artists or individual people. I think I get inspired by what's like kind of going on internally, and then like what's going on in the world. But to answer you, inspiration, that's kind of where it comes from. But people guidance from other artists has been fantastic. A lot of these other artists, I have a question about like, oh, how do these drop mechanics work I'm so used to Super, how does it work? And people are always very receptive and like make great suggestions and answer any questions I have, or even like collectors too, like talking with collectors about, like the security of like, your crypto assets, and people make recommendations of those like ledgers where it's like the hard wallet or the hot wallet. Any real crypto questions I might have, like people have been great guidance in the community. So
yeah, great. And I guess like one we're at the start of a year, so one thing that I like to ask is if there's anything that you're particularly looking forward to see this year in the NFT space. Like obviously you've mentioned some innovations on the tech side of things and the digital art. What about potentially like other things that you would like to see happening in the NFT space, or even for yourself as well.
Yeah, like in general in the NFT space, I would love to see like that emergence between the fine art gallery and the NFT space, where, you know, like once things are getting more open and galleries start opening their doors, where guests could go into an art gallery and they see a piece and they can pull up their phone and it's like an AR and it's animated. And then there's like a QR code at the bottom of like the canvas or something like that, and they can scan it and it takes them straight into the blockchain and the NFT space. So bringing like, I think those two worlds together would be really awesome to see. I feel like that's definitely going to happen, but I look forward to seeing that. And I think I get excited about like virtual reality galleries. I know like Somnia Space is doing that, and I think with the technology, it's just going to get better and better. It's just, I'm really excited about VR art in general and the virtual gallery space. And I think those two things are the things that kind of really pop in my head that I'm most excited about.
Yeah, 100%. And actually, on the first one, that's really interesting. Do you see that, you know, like as something like, you know, maybe with even with your like, you know, your connections as well, like from like art galleries, is it something that you feel that art galleries are starting to really take on board, or they're starting to like open their eyes up a little bit to the NFT space? Like how real do you think that is for them?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, because about a year ago, before COVID hit, I think I was talking to a gallery in LA, Think Space Gallery, and they do a lot of like contemporary and pop surrealist stuff, like a lot of my style. And I told them like I mostly do my stuff digital, so they're like, nope, we don't do digital art. That's like completely out the door. But then there's another independent art gallery in LA as well called Super Chief Gallery, and they're a little more like kind of on the outskirts and the underground art gallery, but they get a big reception. Some really well-known artists like from Instagram have done a lot of stuff on there. And I think a fine artist did a nifty drop like a few months ago, but I think his stuff's been in Super Chief Gallery. And Super Chief Gallery is way more open to the idea. They're like cool if it's like digital art, but I see like places like that gravitating and showing a lot of interest in the NFT space, as far as I'm aware.
Yeah, that's interesting to hear. I guess like the more, you know, fine artists like move to the space, the more the galleries will have to keep up as well with the evolution and with the innovation. So it's, I guess, a consequence of what is happening.
Yeah, and to add to that and kind of go back to like other artists I actually kind of get inspired by, because now I think about there's Lush Socks. Lush Socks came to mind because I know he's really interested in the NFT space, and he does these like memeable graffiti art, and he did like Beeple, I think, in the Winklevoss twins like a couple months ago. And he's been doing some really cool innovative things with his graffiti murals, where he paints like a subject matter, and then he paints a green screen as well behind them, and then he like adds like stuff like the VFX on top of it. So it's this really cool mixture of like graffiti and like visual effects, and then kind of using that to pivot into NFT space. I think that's pretty awesome. And to go back to like galleries and stuff, I'm assuming sure he has like collectors and galleries. That's a great way to get that kind of world involved in that space.
For sure. Well, you need to start convincing all of your your friends and your network to move into the NFT, so then galleries will follow.
Yeah, exactly.
So to close this off, I wanted to ask you like a couple of really like quick questions. They're like general, like random questions that I like to ask.
Yeah.
Nothing too weird, I promise. So the first so the first one is what is the first thing you do when you wake up?
Oh god, try not to get on the phone. and
What is
make
it again?
coffee.
Sorry.
Brush my teeth. Go to the bathroom. I think like every human.
One thing that you can't live without.
What was that?
One thing that you can't live without.
Oh, water. I definitely
Nice.
need water.
I was thinking more, usually it's like
Physical.
Wi-Fi or internet or something along the...
I mean, it would suck if I couldn't live without my hands and I couldn't create. So I think I could do without Wi-Fi. It would suck, but I think I might manage.
Machines or people?
Both, actually.
All right, I'll give you that. If you had a time machine, would you go in the future or in the past?
I think I'm more interested in the future. So definitely the future.
Yeah.
What about you?
Well, I think I would go in the past, actually.
Do you know what times you would go?
Like probably around the 70s, like 80s. I think that's like a time frame that I'd like to experience. So myself, I'm from the 90s. So it's like I've never lived in that era, let's say. So I think I'd go there.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that are happening then culturally and musically and
Exactly. Yeah. I think it's definitely like a pivotal like time. So it'd be cool to go back there.
that'd be true. Cool.
And one last one. If you could speak to somebody from the past, who would it be and why?
God.
Or somebody who's, I don't know, not even from the past, but general.
Yeah, I like this question. No, I think like Mobius, the artist Mobius, because I was definitely inspired by him, and I think he passed away like not too long ago. And he did a lot of really cool like artwork for like Heavy Metal magazine. But yeah, Mobius for sure. Just to kind of pick his brain, where he got his inspiration from, because obviously I got inspired by him, but I always wonder like from him personally, where did he find his inspiration? So I think I'd love to like have a conversation with him if I could.
Nice. Well, thank you so much for being here with me. Like, it was so good to speak to you. And obviously, like, looking forward to your drop next week on Nifty. So that's amazing. Good luck with that. And yeah, it was great to chat.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you for having me. And yeah, have a good day.
Amazing. Have a good one. Bye-bye.
Awesome. See ya.
See you.